Hey guys, I'm Will, and in this video I'm going to share with you some easy and effective tips for using your wide angle lens to capture landscapes. Without a doubt, the main lens that I use to create my images would be my wide angle, a 16 to 35mm, and I'd say over half of my entire portfolio is probably shot using this lens. What I love about it is that it allows me to capture everything that I can see when I'm out in the field, from my peripheral, what's at my feet, and then of course everything beyond out into the horizon. So it's a perfect type of lens to capture grand landscape scenes. They allow me to create a really big sense of depth because I can capture multiple layers within the scene, beginning at what's right in front of me, then of course the mid-ground, and then going on to the background. Firstly, what is a wide angle lens? Well, sometimes you'll see lenses like a 24-70 marketed as being wide. I guess I'm talking more about, say, 20mm and wider, essentially what you'd probably call an ultra wide. Some of the common lenses you can buy in this range go from 12 to 24, 14 to 24, and then the classic 16 to 35. Keep in mind that if you're not on a full frame camera, you might have a crop sensor, then you'll have to be wider again to compensate for that crop factor of the sensor. I think Canon has like a 10 to 20mm. One of the best is the Tokina 11 to 16mm 2.8. That's what you'll need to be looking at if you're on a crop sensor. All right, that's enough of that fun stuff. I'll get the lens out now and we'll apply it in the field, and I'll run through what I'd consider some key tips to keep in mind when you're shooting with a wide angle lens. Okay, the first piece of advice is perspective. You need to change your perspective and start looking at the world in a completely different point of view. The whole point of using a wide angle lens is to be able to capture such a wide perspective. So now when you walk out into the landscape, you're not just going to be looking out at that main subject, which typically that's why you go to a location, to photograph a specific subject. Once you know what that subject is, it's time to forget about that and start to look around the entire landscape, particularly at what's immediately in front of you, because that's what a wide angle lens is going to allow you to do. Capture those things right in front of you. If you're used to using a tighter lens, let's say a 24 to 70 or something like that, which is a common lens to get when you first start out, you're naturally going to start looking for compositions that begin 6 to 10 feet in front of you. With the 16mm, start to look for compositions that begin more or less right in front of your feet. So a big portion of my time out in the field is not necessarily looking for that main subject, it's looking for the rest of the scenery that I can capture with the wide angle lens. All right, the next thing I want to talk about now is composition. One of the main reasons why you use a wide angle is to allow you to capture and get close to a foreground while still being able to fit everything in the background. Being wide means you can get in really close and still fit that background in. Now, why would you do that? The point is to create depth, grab the viewer's attention, and lead the eye from that foreground into the background. When you get close to the foreground, you're emphasizing those details and making them become large, and the eye always will flow in visual art from whatever is large to small. The eye wants to travel, and if you're putting that large element down the lower portion of the frame and a solid main subject in the background, the eye will want to flow from big to small. So don't be afraid to get in really close. Now, what are we looking for in the foreground? Well, it's going to depend on your location. You want to find something that does not distract and doesn't take away from that main subject. Typically, you're looking for something that might frame the scene, or in this case, utilizing leading lines that push the eye out into the distance. I'll also sometimes use a bit of a balancing act, utilizing something on the lower right, something on the lower left, and then allowing a little gap up the center for the eye to flow through. Just keep in mind, you want something that's not going to complicate the scene or just become distracting. It needs to create flow and harmony and be cohesive with the rest of the image. Alright guys, the next thing I want to talk about is distortion and using it to your advantage. The majority of wide angle lenses will have a curved glass element, which means the edges of your image are going to be stretched and pulled slightly. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, because what we can do with distortion is use it to enhance our framing, our composition, our leading lines, and even do justice to our subject in the background. Now, how do we take advantage of this distortion? It's all about the angle that you're shooting at. The composition and how you're tilting that lens. Now, typically when it comes to composition, which I spoke about earlier, one thing I didn't mention is with your horizon, typically with a wide angle, getting that horizon just above the halfway point. And what I would normally do is say 60% of my frame would be from the horizon down, and then that 40% from the horizon up. There's two reasons for that. The first one is that I'm emphasizing foreground, so the eye will naturally be drawn there and then flow into the background, but also that very slight downward tilt will warp and stretch my main subject to make it look more pronounced, and it will also do some warping in the foreground as well. If you're shooting your frames straight on, so there's no real angular distortion, you won't have any distorted effect at all, and if anything, you're going to suffer from what's called the pincushion effect, where whatever's in the middle of the frame, which will most likely be your main subject, will look quite small. So really, by tilting down more, you're going to help overcome that pincushion effect slightly. It's going to drag those lines around, which all subtly push the eye to that center point. So the best way to find out is to just remember, when you're out in the field, tilt down a little bit to emphasize that foreground. The eye will be drawn there, and just as you're tilting, check out what it's doing to the surrounding elements on the edge of the frame, because even the clouds will get a nice natural pull going on, and this will just help converge the attention to the center of the frame, and that's where we want people to end up. We don't want people drifting off. Okay, the last thing is the settings. Using a wide angle lens, I keep talking about getting close. When you get so close to a subject, your depth of field becomes huge, because you have an immediate subject right in front of the lens, and then you have something obviously further away in the distance. And typically in landscape photography, it's nice to render everything tack sharp. At least that's what I like to do, because that's how it works in the real world. When I look at something, I can see the details. So when I look at my image, or when a viewer looks at the image, I want them to be able to see details, whether they're looking at something right at the lower part of the frame or far off in the distance. So how do we get everything tack sharp from front to back? There's two ways really. The first is using a narrow aperture. Now my go-to is about f11. Then from there, I'll close down further if needed. Now don't think that as you change your f-stop, the depth of field dramatically changes with every adjustment. It's a very slow process, and the depth of field works expanding away from you and closer to you. So if you're focusing in the midground, as you give yourself more depth of field, going from f9, f10, f11, that depth of field will slowly travel to away and closer to you from wherever you focused initially. Why would you not use f22? Most lenses, the further you close down that aperture, the optical quality suffers and the whole image just becomes softer, so it's kind of counterintuitive. So I typically will start on f11, take a shot, check the framing and zoom right in, and if I'm soft in the foreground, for example, then I might try f16, f18 if I need to. Worst case, the next thing you can do is focus stacking. What is focus stacking? Well, it's taking more than one exposure, focusing at different points with each exposure, and then we blend it together in post to render an infinite depth of field. When you do a focus stack, ideally you still use a narrow aperture, f11 for example. That way each frame is giving a big overlap, and therefore you might only need 2 frames, maybe 3, worst case 4. And keep in mind, whenever you get really close to that foreground, it doesn't matter what your f-stop is, sometimes it's just impossible for the lens to capture that depth of field, because that first focal point is just so close. So that'll often be, say you want to get some wildflowers or details on some ice or ferns, whatever it may be. If you decide you want to be really close, within 12 inches type thing, then it doesn't matter what f-stop you're at, you just can't be sharp at the front and at the back. So you're better off just going to somewhere like f11, f16, and then begin your focus stack from the very lower part of the frame all the way through. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that, and if you're interested in learning more how I do focus stacking, process my images, and if you want to see some start to finishes on my portfolio shots, I've got a masterclass which is on sale at the moment, and you can check out the details in the description below. Cheers.